Speaking of suspect, Derek Carr arm is suspect. And what's suspect is that we don't know too much about where Shedeur Sanders could potentially end up. We're going to make a quick stop in the NFL for this one. Then we coming right back to the NBA to get some playoff conversations going. Uh, Speaking of NFL, does Derek Carr injury news change our perspective and mind on where Shedeur Sanders gets drafted? And Zach, the mic is yours.
Yeah, well, so when I think about the New Orleans Saints, and I believe I've said this a few times on the show, the one thing I always keep coming back to is that this franchise made a massive mistake not going to full rebuild mode after Drew Brees retired and after Sean Payton, quote unquote, retired, but we know he left. He just was done with the situation. And I think that decision has really cost them going to this point. And I think if I was Kellen Moore, their new head coach, like during the interview, the first question I would have asked them if I was him is, what exactly is the plan here? I just feel like the Saints need a season where, I'm not saying they should blatantly tank, but maybe they should. Like, I think it's time for them to blow this thing up. They're in salary cap hell right now. And I just think the organization is in a rough spot. They've just paid so much money to some of their big name guys over the course of the last few years, and it hasn't gotten them anywhere. Now, I do think firing Dennis Allen was a good start. That guy had no business being a head coach. I don't know how he was able to keep his job for that long. And I do think bringing in Kellen Moore is a good start. But yeah, you need to find your quarterback in this draft. And I think going into this draft, that is the one storyline for me that is so fascinating. Is it seems pretty clear that the Titans are going to take Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. But then after that, there are a few teams that need quarterbacks, specifically the Browns picking at number 2 and the Giants picking at number 3. But the consensus opinion is that some of the other non-quarterbacks in this draft, like an Abdul Carter, like a Travis Hunter, are so good that even if you do need a quarterback, you shouldn't pass them up. So I think those two guys are probably going to go 2 and 3, meaning you could have quarterbacks like a Shedeur Sanders, like a Jackson Dart, like a Tyler Shuck from Louisville. That's kind of the hot name right now. I'm curious to see where these guys go and who takes them. That's really the number one storyline for me going into this draft. And when it comes to the Saints specifically, I think they have to draft a quarterback. And I do like the fit with Shedeur to New Orleans because, look, I don't think Shedeur should play much his rookie year. I think sitting a year would benefit him. And if you're the Saints, that's perfect because it's not like your expectation should be to win anyway. So if I'm New Orleans, what I'm trying to do right now is, okay, Derek Carr's out for the season. I think that could be a blessing in disguise because that gives you the opportunity to mail it in a bit. Just start Spencer Rattler for the whole season. We saw a little bit of him last year. Not really anything special. So you doubt he's going to really win that many games. Keep him in there. And I would draft Shedeur and keep him on the bench. Let him develop, kind of go with that Jordan Love plan. And then going into next year with the full season under his belt, you go from there. That's how I would play it.
Lee?
Yeah, you made some good points, Zach. I want to call you out on a couple of them, though. First of all, first thing I'll say is we don't know if Derek Carr is out for the season or not. I think Derek Carr is in his feelings a lot because the Saints have thrown it out there that they're looking to draft a quarterback. They need to draft a quarterback because I've always said Derek Carr wasn't the answer. He's never been a great quarterback. You know, in a passing league, your statistics sometimes cover up some of your flaws because you throw it so much. He'll have a good game and then he'll have 2 bad games. You know, so I have never thought that Derek Carr was a great quarterback. So I do think that the Saints should draft Shedeur. I agree with you there. However, Shedeur, in my opinion, and I think facts, you know, a lot of people love Cam Ward, and I think Cam Ward is a great prospect. But I think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the draft. Accuracy matters in the NFL. Throwing your receivers open matters in the NFL. Your toughness matters in the NFL. Shedeur Sanders, the last 2 years, played behind some of the most, and we talked about this, Leel, terrible offensive lines that we've seen in college football. But he stood in the pocket, went down the barrel, threw the ball into tight spots. That's what you do at the next level. You don't throw the wide open receivers in pro football the way you do in college football. And that's not a knock on Cam. Cam has a strong arm. He's mobile. I love that about him. He's athletic for a person his size, but athletic. He's not Jaden Daniels athletic, and he's not Lamar Jackson athletic, but he is athletic. Shedeur has the tool set to come in and start right away. He's the most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft. He's the most NFL-ready quarterback, and I think the Saints should take him. I think the Saints should play him. I also think there's been a lot of reports that the Raiders are going to go Aston Genty. They need a running back. There is no doubt about it that the Raiders need a running back. But if I was the Raiders, I would look at drafting Shedeur as well. You have Geno Smith for 2 years. You could get out of that contract after 1 year, really. And remember, Pete Carroll did the same thing with Russell Wilson when he came out. They signed the boy from Green Bay. And then competition was wide open. Russell got the starting job. I can see Geno and Shedeur, Shedeur battling it out for the starting quarterback for the Raiders. I think they love Genty more than drafting Shedeur, but I think the Raiders making a mistake passing on Shedeur as well. But I certainly think New Orleans should go with Shedeur, and he should start day one.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Lee, you ended there with a conversation that I would like to bring up on next week's show when the draft comes around, which is which one of those teams would be the Atlanta Falcons of this year. Yeah. Oh, we don't expect you to draft a quarterback, but you draft a quarterback. Yeah. The Green Bay Packers, we don't expect you to draft a quarterback, but you draft a quarterback, Absolutely. Right? But I do think the Saints definitely should draft Shedeur, right? I do think it's a good fit. I like the weapons over there. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. I believe they signed Brandon Cooks back over there as well. Kellen Moore, right? I thought when Kellen Moore took this job, I kind of looked at him side-eyed because it's like, Derek Carr, really? That's who you want to trust that you could be able to keep your job with him on the line, basically with your job on the line, trusting in him. But I do think with this move with a quarterback coach, basically, right? That's a quarterback. I won't say guru. I don't really, sure, he won with Jalen Hurts, but I mean, come on, I won't call him a guru, but he works with the quarterback. He was a former quarterback in college, Boise State, right? I think that makes sense to draft a guy like Shedeur. I do agree that he has some of those intangibles that translate to the NFL. He doesn't have that athleticism that Cam Ward has. Obviously, he took a lot of sacks in college, but you married that with the offensive line. But I do think he's NFL ready, and I think the Saints should be all over that. But who are we kidding? It doesn't change my perspective. I still think the Steelers needs Shedeur Sanders out of anybody because guess what? They need a quarterback. Okay, and sure, the Saints are in football purgatory, Steelers as well. Sure, the Saints are in salary cap purgatory, right? So Shedeur would add some juice to the organization, give them some sizzle because they flaming out. Who cares about the Saints anymore since Drew Brees? Well, now if Shedeur's over there, that would definitely put more butts in the seat. So business, football, it makes sense. But the Steelers, man, okay, I come on this show all the time, and I light that franchise up like I'm RoboCop, all right, like I'm daggone Terminator, but it's for a reason. I actually want to see them with a quarterback so I can literally go to Mike Tomlin and be like, okay, if you win with your quarterback, now you got your quarterback. There's no excuses, okay? Nobody can look at me with a straight face and tell me that you still that dude if you're not winning with a franchise quarterback. They passed on Lamar. They passed on Jalen. Okay, they passed on all these guys. All right, they need to trade up because I don't know. Listen, I don't know where Shedeur is going. Okay, this draft is the biggest mystery in regards to him. He could go to the Giants. He could fall all the way down to the first round, which I think is highly unlikely, but it's possible. We don't know. But if he's there and the Steelers could move up and trade up to get him, they should do that. So, yeah, to answer the question so I don't get confused, I do think the Saints should be all over that. But I do think, and I'm going to add this caveat, that the Steelers should jump ahead of the Saints if they can and take that man.
I think the other question we have to answer is Shedeur consensus number 2 when it comes to quarterbacks in this draft? Because some people think he is, and I think he is, but other people will tell you that it's Jackson Dart. Other people will tell you that it's this kid, Tyler Shuck from Louisville. Jalen Milroe even has gotten some buzz. And I think Will brought up some good points about the Steelers, but what's so fascinating to me is they are not the only team in that category. Like the New York Giants, we have to talk about them because they have the number 3 pick, and it's looking like they're going to pass on the quarterback, at least with that first pick of theirs. But let's not forget, guys, like this team last year in what was probably it's going to end up one of the better quarterback drafts we've seen in recent memory last year. They could have taken Michael Penix. They could have taken J.J. McCarthy. They could have taken Bo Nix, but they decided to take a wide receiver, and we saw how this season turned out for them. We know that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are very much on the hot seat going into this season. They're going to need to do something this year to save their job. And I'm telling you right now, playing Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, it's not going to do that. And I think them signing those guys maybe pointed to the fact that, okay, maybe they're not going to take a quarterback early, but they have to take a quarterback in this first round because the only way for those guys to save their job, I think, is to trot out a young quarterback who shows some promise and you could maybe sell your ownership on, oh, okay, this guy's making progress and we want some stability with him going forward. There have even been some reports that came out in the last few days that the Giants are going to work out Shedeur. They're going to work out Milroe and Chuck, I believe, as well. So I think that might be John Mara getting involved, but I just feel like the Giants are a team in that mix. We mentioned the Saints. There are just a lot of teams right now, the Browns, who I think could really use a quarterback, but how aggressive are these teams going to be? Because after Cam Ward, I feel like in most drafts, there isn't even a guy that's a consensus top 10, top 15 pick, but we know quarterback inflation and how desperate these teams could get. So that's really what stands out to me, the number one storyline going into this draft.
Yeah, I think a lot of NFL people, because they don't put their names on it, people float what they want to float out there. Look, I watched I'm an SEC guy. I watched Jackson Dart play a lot last year. He's a talented guy, makes terrible decisions. That's why he's a second or third round pick. Makes terrible decisions. So I saw him in 3 quarters light up. I think it was Florida, and then the 4th quarter threw 4 interceptions. Decision making is terrible. Jalen Milroe, he's a project. They're working him out. The athleticism is great, but again, decision making and accuracy on him an issue. The Shook guy, he's older. He's 6'5". He has a little mobility, he moves around, but again, that's a second or third rounder. No one can really say with Shedeur what's it that they don't like, right? They don't like that he's not a great athlete, yet he moves in the pocket very well, like a Tom Brady, like a Drew Brees, who weren't great athletes, like a Peyton Manning. He knows how to step up in the pocket and deliver an accurate ball. So when we talk about Shedeur, people really don't talk about his quarterbacking IQ. He can set the offense. He can set the protection. He learns offenses very well. He's had like 4-5 offensive coordinators the last 5 years. They talk about intent. He's not a great athlete. What is a great athlete? But I'll say this, Leel, what you said about the Steelers is very correct. The Steelers have the ammunition to move up from 21 to 8, right? Or to 9. Or, they have that ammunition, right? Zach, what I don't know if the Giants or Cleveland can do, because they would have to now mortgage a lot of their future to get back into that before 2019 range. That's a lot of capital to give up. But I do agree, Cleveland and the Giants need a quarterback. I think the Giants would be better served to take Travis Hunter, even over Abdul Carter, because I think pairing him with Malik Neighbors, if you have a serviceable quarterback, you're going to move the football. I like the running back they got, the Foster kid. I think the Giants getting Travis, I think that's a great pickup to pair him with Neighbors. I think that's going to sell tickets, and they're going to have offense that moves the ball. I think Cleveland goes Abdul Carter, but it could flip-flop. I just don't see either one of them taking Shedeur at the second or third pick.
Yeah, I mean, this is my last point, and then fellas, feel free if y'all want to chip in your last points. I just think that when you talk about Shedeur Sanders, that's just like a mystery. And I think this whole draft, evaluating quarterbacks is generally a mystery, unless you have the Caleb Williams. Obviously, a lot of hype behind that. We have yet to see if he will bounce back. In Chicago, we know how good Jaden Daniels is and how he's already a top 10 quarterback in my estimation in the NFL. But you're going to get Jordan Loves. You're going to get Patrick Mahomes. You're going to get Bus, right? Zach Wilson, right? A lot of it is taking a risk. Lamar Jackson fell to the last pick of the draft. Okay, the Steelers could see their future. I'm picking on the Steelers again. Okay, if they could see their future in how they was going to be the most average football team of all time. Okay, just average. All right, not good, not great, not bad, just average. If they could see their future, they would have took Lamar Jackson, but they didn't want to take that risk. They thought he was one of those project players, right? Just like how you name a Melrose. Like, okay, he's a project, right? And then you got the Malik Willis as well. So I think that's where you get paid the big bucks, right? That's why we talk sports and not, we're not in it. Okay, watch film, make that decision. That's why you have the scout people. They get paid for a reason. They get paid a check. We don't. We just react and give our take on things we see on film, but we don't always get it right. Y'all the ones getting paid. Y'all got to make the decision on, okay, should we draft that quarterback? Is he a person that we could put in the ecosystem to be successful along with his attributes, or should we pass? Folks, it's not that hard. Maybe it is, but it's really not. You're getting paid, okay? That's it. And the Saints got to make that choice.
Before we move on, there's just one more minor storyline going into this draft that I wanted to mention since we're going to be done talking NFL after this. I feel like the seasons Saquon Barkley and Derek Henry just had are going to provide a boom for the running back position, and we're going to see it in this draft. Lee mentioned Ashton Genty. We all feel pretty confident he's going to be a top 10 pick. We know the guy is electric, but even guys like Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina, even a Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, I think both those guys are going to be first-round picks. And recently, we know in these drafts, outside of the elite prospects like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, we haven't really seen a lot of running backs go high in the draft. I think that's going to change this year, and that's just my second storyline, I'll say, going into this draft.
Good point.
And that could be a flop too, because just like how when Patrick Mahomes got drafted and everybody saw the film of Zach Wilson being able to flick the football 70 yards, so we'll take Zach Wilson, and he was a bust. Okay, I think the same thing could be with the running backs. Not saying that they are outliers, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, but I do think narratives, a lot of teams follow narratives, and sometimes following a narrative and letting that alter what you see on tape and what you see on film could definitely impact you, and you could end up making bad decisions, because I don't think that running back should be drafted high. I'm not going to change that because Saquon Barkley had this monstrous year. He's Saquon Barkley. Hello. Okay. It's not going to change the fact that you shouldn't be drafting running backs in the first round unless it's somebody special like a Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's different.
Ashton Genty is a special running back.
He's special, but
he's special. Omarion Hampton is as well. The Travion Henderson has all the talent in the world, but he's injury prone. He got hurt every year in college, and that's what's going to have him drop down. I don't think he's a first-round draft pick, Zach. I think he's more of a second to third rounder simply because of the injury history that he has. But Hampton's the real deal. Hampton is the real deal. Physical runner, great on balance, catches the ball out the backfield, probably has the best hands, and Henderson does too, out of the backfield of it, the running backs in the class. He checks off all the boxes. So I do think both of those running backs will go in the first round. The other thing I'll say, Leel, I would draft a running back in the first round. What I would have a hard time doing, unless he's special, is giving him that second contract, because that second contract is why he gets the big bucks, as opposed to that first contract. You can manage that going into that fifth-year option. So it would be hard for me to say, after I draft him in the first round, because you got to remember, running backs, by the time they get into the NFL, let's say they just go 3 years, they've had 250, 300 carries for 3 years. Then they come into the NFL and they play 4 years and they average 150, 200 carries. By the time they come up for that fifth-year option, they've had a lot of wear and tear. So they'd have to be tremendously special, like a Saquon Barkley.
Literally. And that's why I think people will play a dangerous game trying to mirror what Saquon Barkley did, because it's not like Saquon Barkley is a player with fresh mileage. This guy been playing in college, Penn State, doing what he's doing. He's been on the Giants for a couple years, went through the injuries, and he had this great spectacular year. Showed that he still got a lot left in the tank, and he's clearly the best running back in the league on a very good team with a great offensive line. So I don't think you could just look at that and let that impact, how you draft, because he should be old. Derrick Henry's old, but he's not. When you look at him on the field, he doesn't look it. Those are aberrations. That is not a model you follow.